Hello everyone and welcome to detailed analysis of articles which are published in the explained section of Indian Express. Here we take up all those articles which have not been covered under the DNS initiative but are equally relevant for your UPSC preparation. Articles are listed on your screen and the timestamping for the same is given in the description box. So let us start with the first article itself. So the first article is from your June 9th of Indian Express, and this article is talking about a new drug which is now made available for the public use. Context of the article says that a new drug which treats Alzheimer's disease holds promise, but it is not a cure, it is only slowing down cognitive decline due to the cause of Alzheimer's. The drug name aducanumab from the company Biogen has shown promising result in order to slow down the cognitive decline due to Alzheimer's disease. However, the drug name or the company name is not relevant for the UPSC. The more important thing is what is Alzheimer's and how it is caused. This drug has been approved by Food and Drug Administration from the United States, which is the world's most trusted regulator when it comes to the standards of food and medicine. This drug is also important and was in the news because this is the first new medication for the Alzheimer's to get such kind of approval in the past 2 decades. Well, what is Alzheimer? Before we venture into what is Alzheimer, we should know the background of it. Alzheimer is a kind of dementia. Dementia is a common mental disorder of poor cognitive abilities dealing with memorization. So it means a person who is suffering from dementia will face memory loss, and this will keep on increasing with the age of person. So Alzheimer's dementia is the most common type of dementia, and it involves the formation of plaque and tangles which are formed inside the brain. This disease is nothing but an accelerated aging of certain neurons in your brain that are concerned with the storage and processing of the memory. So those neurons in our brain which are responsible for creating and storing the memories which we have. And when a person suffers from Alzheimer's, those neurons are the ones which get affected. And what happens? They actually become dysfunctional. And why this dysfunction is taking place and how all this actually happens? Well, we will look that in more detail. This disease is a progressive disease. That means it increases, or the symptoms of this increases with the passage of time. So as a person become more and more and more older, he is more likely to get the severe symptoms of Alzheimer's dementia. Well, as far as data is concerned, well, globally there are over 50 million patients, and in fact, in India, we have over 5.3 million patients suffering from Alzheimer's. And the most important issue is that there is no cure available for this disease. And because of this, actually, what scientists are trying is to find out as early as possible a medicine to cure this disease. But that has not been turned into the reality by now. Whatever we have achieved as a human race, that we have achieved a creation of a drug which is mentioned in this article that slow down the cognitive decline. So it may delay the development of Alzheimer's symptoms, but it cannot kill away or it cannot reduce the possibilities to the negligible when it comes to the Alzheimer's symptoms. Well, this is the basic process of how Alzheimer's disease actually affects the human body. Well, first of all, what happens? That when a person is suffering for the Alzheimer's at the early stage, there is a breaking down of the neurons. Which neurons? Which are responsible for your memory or your memorization abilities. This breaking down of the neurons actually go away and they accumulate in a particular part of your brain. And the accumulation of these neurons creates debris. And these debris actually formed into what we call as plaque or tangles. But there is a special protein with amyloid beta name, and this protein actually help in formation of this debris into the plaques. And when the plaque formation takes place, a person starts losing his memories. Once they lose memories, they also lose the basic control in their routine life. They may forget the faces, the memories, the names of their family members. And in the worst case possible, they may even forget how they were surviving till now. The drug aducanumab will help to reduce what the amyloid beta protein. So once this protein is reduced through this drug or through this medicine, what we will have? We will have lesser formation of the plaque or the tangles in the brain. And once this is achieved, we can easily delay the formation or the severity of Alzheimer's disease. However, still we have many issues which are attached to this drug rolling out. The first being, of course, it is very expensive. This drug will cost around 40 lakh rupees per year for the treatment. And in a country like India, treatment of Alzheimer's would become almost impossible. Overdose of this drug is causing swelling. This was found in a research which was conducted in the United States. And the second was that it also causes a minor or a frequent headache among the patients. The another issue which is also staggering in this direction is that pathophysiology of Alzheimer's disease is not completely understood. Well, in layman's language, it means that still we do not know everything about Alzheimer's and how to treat them through chemical drugs. And last, of course, that no study of this has ever been attempted in India or on the Indian population. So there are the reasons that population across the world have different genetic makeup. And because of this genetic makeup, drug in a particular nation or in a particular continent may not be possibly be applied to other people or other population. And this is the reason that if we want to roll out this kind of drug to treat Alzheimer's in India, what we require is to go on with a separate study on the Indian population so as to look into the effects and the side effects of this drug on India. With this, now I move to the question which is attached to this article. So pause the video, read the question carefully and answer in the comment box. Now we move to the next article. This article, What to Watch Out For at G7, was published on June 12th in Indian Express Explained section. This article actually talks about what is the current status of G7, how it will evolve, and what are the future aspects as far as India is concerned. G7, or a group of seven, was actually founded in 1975 with only 6 members. The reason for the formation of G7 was the energy crisis which was going in 1970s because of the sudden rise in the oil prices. Canada, which is also the current member of G7, was added in the second meeting of this grouping, and Russia was added in 1998. After the addition of Russia, it was called as G8 or Group of 8. However, Russia ceases to be a member of this group in 2014 as it was responsible for the Crimean annexation. Hence, in 2014, the membership became again to G7. Currently, there are 7 members which include US, UK, France, Germany, Italy, Canada and Japan. So Japan is the only Asian nation which is part of G7. As far as facts are concerned, the grouping includes 40% of the world GDP and 10% of its population, and this 10% actually has a majority from US and Japan. There is no legal existence. So this group never came up through a treaty or any kind of agreement. So there is no legal existence of this group in the history. Secondly, it does not have any permanent secretariat. And lastly, it does not have any official members. So this G7 group does not work on the ground of United Nations. This does not work on the ground of NATO or any other groupings like our own SARC. So there is no legal backing, there is no permanent secretariat like we have for the SARC nations. Now I want from you to comment the headquarter of SARC nations. Where is the permanent secretariat of SARC nation is situated? And lastly, that it does not have any binding impact on the policy and all the decisions and the commitments made by the G7 members in their meeting need to be ratified independently by the governing bodies of the member state. It means that G7 will not pass any policy parameters. They will not form any particular agreement. They will not form any kind of global agreement or a global policy that they will say that we as a nation or we as a grouping will implement in the future. Whatever they will decide, they will pass it independently. They will ratify it independently through their own legislation or legislating bodies. When it comes to the G7 in 2021, well, it was organized in United Kingdom on the place Cornwall, England. The feature was that at this time, actually United Kingdom has invited other members also. And among these members, there are India, Australia, South Korea, and South Africa. Well, two of these members are also part of your BRICS nation as well as your basic nations. The theme of this meeting was Build Back Better. Now, what they want to build? Well, they are trying to build a geopolitics of the globe after the pandemic crisis. What we have been facing is that the global pandemic has reduced the economic, political, as well as geopolitical activities, and that has actually hampered and also provided opportunity for many other countries, including China, to go aggressive. So G7 nations, along with these four partners, are looking to build back better the situation which was existing pre-crisis or the pre-pandemic crisis. Along with this theme, the members have also pledged to bring 1 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccines to be distributed across the globe. And if India turns out to be a good beneficiary of the scheme, India may get at least 5 to 10 million doses from this initiative. The four focus areas of this G7 meeting are recovery from the coronavirus and the future resilience, championing the free and the fair trade, tackling the climate change, of course, because last year the climate change or the conference of parties to the UNFCCC was not conducted. So they want to bring it back on the table. And the last one being championing their shared values and the open societies. Well, this does not make any sense as far as geopolitics, current geopolitics concerned, because nations as of now are going away from multilateralism to the bilateralism, and in fact they are creating or forming the policies which are benefiting their own national interest. Take the case of United Nations, take the case of NAM. These international multilateral organizations are losing their shine. They are losing their shine because the nations are forming their own discrete and individual policies, and shared values and open societies are somehow losing their shine. So G7 nations are trying to bring those shared values where as a humanity we all can benefit into the picture. When it comes to the relevance of G7 to India, well, India has started attending the G7 or the G8 meeting multiple times. They have attended. We have attended those meetings multiple times. 5 times we have already attended during Manmohan Singh's period and twice under the Narendra Modi sir's period. India's last attendance in this meeting was in 2019 when the presidency of G7 was under France. As you know, India and France have very good cordial strategic relationships. Even we have good defense relationships. You know the case of Rafale also. Previously, United States ex-president Donald Trump has already called for the extension of G7 to G10 or maybe G11, and this also include India. If this turn out to be a reality in the near future, we will have the following benefits. Well, India will have following benefits. So this means that India should be part of G7 in the future. The benefits which are attached to these are, through this platform, India will have an objective of reforming the world order. We have that. India already holds a multilateralism ideology. India too wants to counter the coercive assertiveness of China. Well, many members in the G7 are also looking to counter the assertiveness of China. G7 will also provide India a high table or a good platform to discuss its agenda. Let's say the NSG reforms or the permanent seat to UNSC. All these reforms could easily be directed, could easily be taken up if India becomes a member to this grouping. In short term, India will definitely gain from the higher share in the vaccine distribution for the COVID-19. Apart from this, India will benefit on defense, trade, technology, as well as the labor market. India will also benefit from the policies on diaspora. As you know that US and UK, they have one of the best labor market policies. This is because they are very good at their cordial relationship when it comes to the movement of labor. And India, of course, is the highest remittances earning nation. In that case, India's diaspora living in other countries also hold a good share as far as India's strategic or geopolitics is concerned. So once India become a part of the G7, people who are living in these countries will definitely have better approach, better policy making for their respective reasons. Take the case of H-1B visa. So if India becomes this part of this grouping, US will have more interactions with India that will definitely benefit Indians who are living in these nations, including US. And lastly, India would be in better position on increasing Russian-China bonhomie. It means whatever China and Russia are planning to create the regime in the Asia as well as in the world as a whole, India would have better support from these G7 nations to stand in a firm position to counter the rising threat from this friendship. With this, now I take you to the question which is attached to this article. So read the question carefully and answer in the comment box. Now we move to the next article for the day. This article of Indian Express Explained section was published on 14th of June 2021. This article actually talks about the background on which the current crisis in Ethiopia is going on. And apart from those crises, it also talks about the current or existing famine which is going on in the state of Ethiopia. As far as UPSC syllabus is concerned, we are not concerned with the internal crisis, or the syllabus does not talks about the internal crisis of the other nations. So UPSC will not ask question on such kind of events until and unless India is directly or indirectly involved in those. So in this case, India is nowhere involved in the crisis of Ethiopia. However, when it comes to the prelims examination, UPSC may ask question on the places which were in the news for various reasons. So from that criteria, what we will do is we will keep aside the current crisis of the Ethiopia and we will focus more on the map based question from this topic. So the given image shows the map of Ethiopia in Africa. This is your Ethiopia, and the place which was in the article, or the place with the name Tigray, is situated in the northern part of Ethiopia, which you can see here in the map. This place is bordered with the another nation, Eritrea, and in the right side of Ethiopia you have Djibouti. In the south or the southeast direction you have Somalia. In south you have Kenya. On the west side you have South Sudan, and in the northwest you have Sudan. The more important thing about Ethiopia is that despite being in the Horn of Africa, despite being situated in the Horn of Africa, so this is your Horn of Africa. Actually, the major part comes under the Somalia, but some of the part is also in Ethiopia. So despite being in the Horn of Africa, Ethiopia does not have coastal areas. So from this area to this one is under Eritrea, then we have Djibouti, and then directly we have Somalia. So Ethiopia does not share water or the ocean boundary. When it comes to the location of Ethiopia is concerned, it lies between Tropic of Cancer and your equator. So equator does not pass from Ethiopia as such. On the right side, you have your Gulf of Aden, because over this place there is a city which is known as Aden. On the upper side, we have Red Sea. Well, Red Sea is a part of the extended Rift Valley system of Africa, which is extended in this direction. So this is your Rift Valley, which is situated in Africa, and in the future, maybe millions of years down the line, we might see that the right section of this area gets separated from the Africa. The article actually talks about the important point of famine. As you can see, the Tigray region, which is in the northern side of the Ethiopia, is situated in or around the desert part. So the entire region over here is part of desert region, and they have high pressure areas, and this is the reason they have the least amount of precipitation. And the population which is living in these areas are also suffering from high level of water scarcity. On the western side of Ethiopia, you can see that this region, I've just shaded up, this area is very green. It means it has high level of precipitation as well as good amount of water supply. And this is one of the reasons why Ethiopia is building one of the most controversial dam in the international relation, which is Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. This dam is situated on the Blue Nile River. Nile River has many tributaries, among which Blue Nile is the important one. So Blue Nile River actually passes from this area, and the dam is building up over this, and that is the border of Sudan and Ethiopia. Well, this was also in the news, so you need to keep this in mind. When it comes to the other places in the map which you also should know, We have Yemen on the eastern side. On northeast, we have Saudi Arabia, Oman, UAE, and the capital of Oman, Muscat. One important town which is situated in the Oman, where India also have much majority of the stake, is Duqm. Now, it is your job to find out the Duqm on the map because it is important for your geopolitics as well as India's international relations. The hint would be that it is a port city situated in Oman's eastern side. The other important area which was actually in the news is the division of Sudan. Well, it took place many years ago, but a few months back there was a crisis between Sudan and the South Sudan for various reasons, and the most important reason being the distribution of the ethnicity and the oil areas. Well, Sudan and the South Sudan actually are divided on the basis of the climatic condition. As you can see, the entire South Sudan is situated in the greener zone. This zone is actually situated more closer to the equator area, hence the rainfall or the precipitation is very, very high. The other part, or the upper Sudan, which is the original Sudan with the capital Khartoum, is situated on the northern area, and 90% of the upper Sudan or the original Sudan is desert area, or it is a dry area. It is also part of the extended Sahara desert. One more important thing which is left is your this yellow dot in the Indian Ocean. Now, what is this place? Which country owns this place? Well, this place or this small island is Socotra Island, and it is under the government of Yemen. Many of the Indians were trapped in this island, and Indian government sent help to rescue these people. This island is actually closer to Somalia than to the Yemen itself. With this, now I will take you to the important question attached to this article. Read the question carefully and answer in the comment box. Now we move to the next article for the day. How indicative is GDP? This article actually talks about the relevance of the GDP data which we are using across the globe. So we will venture into the issues and why GDP is actually relevant in the today's perspective, and what could else be done in order to bring better results from the GDP. Well, as per the NCRTs as well as per the IMF, the GDP is nothing but a quantitative measure of the monetary value of final goods and services. So intermediate goods are not part of the GDP. Those goods that are bought by the final user and produced in a country in a given period of time. So definition is straightforward. It means an aggregate of all goods and services which were produced in a given period of time in a particular area. So all goods and services should be final goods and services. So if a bakery person is buying flour, wheat flour, in order to make a bread, that wheat flour or that bread will not be considered as a part of GDP until and unless that final product or the bread is sold to the final user who's a consumer. So all those goods which are kept in the stocks or are lying idle in the godowns or are not used for the consumption will not be counted for the GDP. So if they are available for the final user, for the final consumption, it is part of the GDP, otherwise it is not. Secondly, anything which is produced inside the country. So a good which is produced in Nepal, Pakistan, Saudi Arab, Japan or US will not be counted in India's GDP because they are outside the domestic boundary of country. And lastly, anything which is produced not in a particular given period of time. So if you are calculating the GDP of 2021, so you have to calculate everything in the last 1 year, not beyond that. So any good which was produced in 2015 will not be counted in the GDP of 2021. This is the basic difference. Now, the point is, what are the issues which are attached to the GDP measures? Well, these issues were directly mentioned in the article itself, so I've just listed them down in order to make it simpler for you to understand. The first thing, that it does not measure the inequality status. So if GDP says that India's GDP, let's say, is $2.5 trillion, it does not say that how many of the citizens are poor, how many of them are very rich, how many of them are this or that. So inequality status or the difference in the income level of the people is not shown. The second being is does not show the happiness level. So how many people are happy with $2.5 trillion of GDP? It does not show that. It fails to measure all goods and services. So there are many goods in the economy which are produced, finally consumed, and government does not even know about it. Let's say a farmer has produced 10 kg of a particular vegetable, let's say cauliflower, and he has produced those vegetables, he has invested money on that, and he has sold that goods in the market, or not even in the market, just to the neighbor. Who ever knew about that? Nobody. So all goods and services cannot be included in the GDP. It is beyond human capacity. Black markets or the illegal activities are out. So their exclusion from the GDP data makes its value much lower. Take the case of Somalia. So Somalia is like a failed nation. It has a very high percentage of dacoits, pirates and others. So do you believe that income earned by those people will make any benefit to the GDP? No. GDP does not count those activities. So even in India, there are billions of dollars which are invested in these activities, but they are not counted in the GDP. So GDP does not show the true value of an economy in monetary terms. Next being that it does not measure the well-being of a nation. Of course, how many people are healthy, how many of them are vaccinated, how many of them are living a good standard of living is not measured from GDP because it does not count the qualitative measures. Next, it does not count or it does not take into account the loss of the environment. So we are very happy to say that India will achieve $3 trillion of GDP. But does that mean that India has already emitted a large amount of carbon? Are we calculating green GDP in absolute terms? Are we making the losses which we have incurred because of the deforestation? We have not. So these are some of the reasons because of which we are not able to calculate the exact or the true level of GDP. And the last one being that the economies which are highly informal have skewed GDP data. It is not possible to calculate each and every economic activity when informality or unorganization is very high in economy. Take the case of India, where unorganized sector or informalization is very high as 4/5 of the GDP. So as I gave you the example of a farmer who's producing a cauliflower, there might be other activities as well. Let's say there is a maid or a servant who is working in a particular house. He is getting a particular salary. But where is his activity is being counted? Nowhere. This informality actually brings up a skewed data. There might be a case that India's GDP is way higher than $2.5 trillion. But the exact amount of GDP is not possible to calculate. But does this prove that GDP is a poor measure of economic activity? Well, not. Still, GDP is used. Why? Well, it is the simplest method of all. It is a quantitative method, hence it can be used for any value. Let's say India's GDP is $2.5 trillion. It can become $10 trillion, 20, 30, 50 or even 100. We can measure it at any value because it is quantitative. But the happiness of a person in this year cannot be compared with the happiness of a person next year because those are the qualitative measures. So well-being is good to get measured, but it is not as good to measure in any value terms. Secondly, qualitative data does not give us a good trend. So if you compare the qualitative data of India in 2021 with that of 2000 or 21 years back, the difference will be very high. And bringing that difference into the picture or into the value or into any monetary terms is almost impossible. Happiness is a subjective thing. Welfare is a subjective thing. So welfare of Scandinavian countries is different from the welfare of Australia. And welfare of Australia is different from welfare of Saudi Arabia. So GDP is not all that bad in that case. Welfare is a qualitative value. Even if the GDP is used to measure it, we would get subjective results. So as I said, it is subjective, it is different from each person, from each nation. So it is better to use something in a monetary terms, something which can be used into numbers and which can be used for further analysis. Hence, GDP is yet to stay and it will be used for various purposes. However, there are many nations across the globe and they have been experimenting with different ideas altogether in order to measure the development in their particular regions. These are some of the nations which were mentioned in the article itself, and these are the nations which have provided different means to measure the well-being and the human development in their particular areas. Well, we will look all of them one by one. So these are some of the countries which have gone beyond the GDP measures. It includes Austria, and Austria has provided a program since 2010 for making 30 different indicators in order to get reality on wealth, quality of life, environment, sustainability. Similarly, Belgium is also doing beyond the GDP measures. They have 67 different parameters or the indicators under 13 different themes. Germany is doing the same as far as 46 indicator is concerned. Israel is doing the same with its well-being, sustainable and national resilience indicators since 2015. Japan actually have different commission or a separate commission for measuring the well-being. It was established in 2010 and working since then. And lastly, United Kingdom also measures the national well-being programs launched since 2010. Well, the question is, does India have similar kind of program? Well, the answer is no. We do not have similar kind of programs to measure the well-being of the Indians on annual basis. However, on different parameters, we have different programs. For instance, we have Swachh Sarvekshan under Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. Similarly, Niti Aayog publishes reports on different parameters. They include your health, they include education, as well as e-governance and other issues. Apart from that, we also have many NGOs such as Pratham, which are working in the field of health, education, social welfare, and others, and they also provide us valuable data. When it comes to the annual program, like it is there in the United Kingdom or it is there in Japan, India does not have that kind of commission. So if you are writing an answer in the mains examination regarding the GDP, you can mention this as a way forward, that India can follow the practices of these six nations combined or separately in order to bring an annual data setup to find out what is the current status of well-being in India. If that is not possible, India can provide a single platform where we can merge the different data from different agencies in order to come up with a single set of standards that shows the status of India's well-being in the current year. With this, now I take you to the question which is attached to this article. Read the question carefully and answer in the comment box.